Welcome back, fellow gamers. So you've picked up Adaptive Enchantment and you're trying to make some tweaks to it. You want to make it your own. Well, I'm here with another video based on a budget of $20 and changes you can make for this deck. One thing before we start, I will not be touching the land bases, so I forgot to mention it in the last video. I think it was the only video I did not mention it in, and I got all kinds of comments saying, what about lands? Lands, I highly recommend you invest in those first and foremost, but for new players or people on a budget, they want something nice, splashy, or just fun to play with. They don't really care about optimizing lands. So with that said, we are going to look at 10 cards to put in. So we are taking out 10 cards here. I'm not going to really spend any time on the cards that I've taken out. If you'd like, to discuss, feel free to discuss in the comments below. I will be happy to give you my thoughts and reasonings, however skewed and wrong they may be. So without further ado, we are going to start with creatures that we're putting in, and the first one would be Archetype of Courage. So this is an enchantment creature, so it does benefit from any of the commanders you decide to use that come in this precon. I've built it with the Estrid in mind, but you can use the other commanders, right? It's not that big of a deal. It is a big deal, but in terms of, just putting in some enchantments that benefit either Estrid or one of the other commander enchantment-based cards. So giving your creatures first strike is great. I like the fact that your opponents lose first strike or they can't gain it. So that's one of the things I like to play this card with. I usually play the archetypes in most of my decks just for the denial ability. Sure, getting first strike is great, but I like denying people stuff. So that's just what it is. And then from there, we've got Sun Titan. So Sun Titan, I've mentioned a few times, I pretty much cram him in to whichever white deck I can. Just because he gets so much value being able to return stuff from the graveyard with a converted mana cost 3 or less. In this case here, we were going to have a lot of enchantments that cost 3 or less and some other creatures as well. Archetype of Courage just being one of them, and just being able to recur all your stuff like that gives you a lot of value, makes Sun Titan a prime target for removal. Wasting, removal from your opponent's hand is a good thing, right? And the final creature we're going to be adding is Hannah, Ship's Navigator. So Hannah is a great card to have, especially in an enchantment and artifact-based deck. Similar to Sun Titan, you're recurring a bunch of stuff. Hannah Ship Navigator is definitely a fun card to use, and with a recent reprinting in Masters 25, the price did come down a significant amount. So I'm really happy to see that. I'm excited. Whenever I draw Hannah, there's usually some good stuff that I can pull out of my graveyard right from the get-go. So card that I thought you would like to include in your deck as one of the suggestions. Moving away from creatures though, we're going to look at a tutor spell, and that is Plea for Guidance. So searching your library for up to 2 enchantment cards and then putting them into your hand is great. Yeah, it costs 6 mana, but you're pulling out any 2 enchantments that you want. I don't see a real problem with this. The other enchantment tutor cards, which cost way less, are good, but unfortunately they're over our budget. This one here falls well within the range of reasonable prices, so why not pick it up under $1? All right, now moving into more enchantments to stuff in this deck. So the first one we're going to go with is Gift of Immortality. This pairs really well with Sun Titan. It pairs really well with a lot of cards that you want to make sure you're utilizing the attacks, or you're utilizing just the enter the battlefield abilities, or it's just on something that is a huge threat that you want to see come back again and again. So there you have it. That's a really good one. Ancestral Mask is pretty good because it is giving a huge buff to one of your creatures. Sure, I'm not a big fan of normally playing these types of auras simply because they give you, a power and toughness bonus, but not much else with it. But I think in this deck, the fact that we're going to have a lot of recursion, we're going to put this in, we're going to see some value for it, we're going to create a beast of a card and hopefully, dominate with this one, or at least put pressure on your opponents to do something about this card ASAP. Annex is a fun card. It's a bit expensive at 4 mana, but you get to enchant a land and then you control enchanted land. Like your opponent plays a Gaia's Cradle, your opponent plays Mishra's Workshop, your opponent plays something that's ridiculously powerful on the other side of the board, or maybe you want an additional Maze of Ith. Hey, there you go. It's yours now, and the fact that you can recur it from Estrid's ability helps you at least make use of this card a second time. Now, obviously, it doesn't happen with Sun Titan. You do get a recursion with Hannah as well, so that's one of the things that works well with Hannah. Another card that I like to recur is Darksteel Mutation. So Darksteel Mutation is such a hoser card. I love this card. I'm surprised that it's not as widely played, or the price tag doesn't justify how it should fit into pretty much all white decks. It's removal that is harder to deal with because you're turning one of their best creatures into a 0/1, cannot be removed, and just kind of stays there with no abilities. Yeah, you can remove the aura or the enchantment, but not that many people run heavy enchantment removal unless, your meta is filled with enchantments. But if you're showing up at, a local game store, or you're playing with a new group, or you want to bust out a new deck, a lot of times this card stays on the battlefield a significant amount of time, so it is worth investing, especially, like I said, the price is right. Finally, we have 2 more cards to go. Overwhelming Splendor is in the same vein where you're turning their creature, now it's not just their more powerful creature, their most powerful creature, it's all of their creatures into 1/1s, and losing their ability. So this is the equivalent of, somewhat of the equivalent of Humility, so that's a card that's on the reserve list. Fun card, but Humility hits both sides of the board, so you lose. I think I just misspoke when I said Humility. Anyways, so that's a card, yeah, it's 8 mana, but it's worth it. It's enchanting a player. You're able to turn all of their creatures into pretty much nothing, and then dealing with them should be easy, considering all your creatures are of their normal stats. They have their normal abilities, and you can help take the game over like that. Finally, it's the most expensive card on this list, and it's funny because when I made this list, I was like, this is going to be way too expensive. And funny enough, Omniscience has dropped in price with the Core 2019 reprinting, so we're sitting at around anywhere between $4.99 to $6.99. It looks like various sites are reporting its price. I've quoted it somewhere at $6.21, just kind of give a middle ground for this card, but it does fit within the budgetary constraints. So this is a card, sticks, you're golden. You're golden. So there you have it. Those are my recommendations. Sure, this one I think was one of the shorter change lists. Estrid's deck, or Adaptive Enchantment, it's kind of a weird deck in that it's got some really good creatures, it's got some good enchantments, but I feel that to take full advantage of the framework of this deck, you need to spend a bit more money than the $20, because a lot of the good cards that are beneficial for this deck are over that price range. But with this list, I do feel that you can still make a fun deck. You could take it to your friend's place or invite some people over, play this game. You might be the top dog, or if you're not the top dog, you'll be somewhere near the top, simply because you have a lot of great cards that synergize well. You have recursion, so the threats that you're playing can come back to haunt people again and again. Let me know what you would include in this deck. I would love to hear it. In the meantime, you can check out some of my other videos. And until next time, good gaming.